Hey guys, today for you all I'm going to be doing a video on e.l.f. brushes. This is just going to be a large e.l.f. brush review. I posted on my Instagram a little while back a picture of this huge e.l.f. brush haul that I had, and I asked you guys if you would like to see reviews on these, and a large amount of you said yes. So that is what I'm doing today. In this cup I also have some random Real Techniques ones, but I'm just going to be talking about the e.l.f. brushes. I have been a fan of the e.l.f. brush line for a long time, specifically the studio brushes. The other ones, to be honest, I haven't been quite so thrilled with. The cheaper white-handled ones, I feel like for the price, you know, $1 or whatever, they're pretty good. But given that these are only $3, I feel like the quality of the studio line is much higher. These are exceptionally soft brushes. This one here I've had for a long time. This is the e.l.f. complexion brush. This is one of my favorite powder brushes. And I have like their eyeshadow C brush. I have various other e.l.f. studio brushes that I really like. And recently I've noticed that my brush collection, it's really hard because I feel like while I have everything I need, I only have like one of everything I need. So if I go traveling and let's say my brushes are all dirty, I don't have any backups to take, or God forbid I lose something, because I'm going to be SOL at that point. So I decided to go in and just pick up some stuff, some brushes that I was really curious to try, as well as just some ones that maybe would work in as fillers in case I didn't have my other ones. So that is the whole idea behind this. There was also, I think I had like a 30% off coupon or something like that, and so I got all of these brushes for I think like $28, and then I had to pay shipping, so it was like super cheap, so I just couldn't say no to it. But yeah, let's just get on into it. I'm not going to do this in any particular order. I'm just going to pull from this little pencil holder that I have and show you guys each one. The first one here though, this is probably my favorite one that I purchased. This is the e.l.f. Ultimate Blending Brush. This is kind of their answer, I think, to the whole like kabuki face foundation kind of brush. Very popular within like the Sigma line. This brush, I think this one might be a little bit more expensive. I think this one is $6 as compared to $3, but I have not found a foundation brush that I like near as much as this one. And I do have the Sigma round top kabuki. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, here we go. So I have the Sigma F82, and then this is the e.l.f. one. If you can see here, there is quite a size difference. The Sigma one is much smaller in comparison, and I don't know if this is going to pick up a whole lot on camera, but there is a much larger density difference as well. The Sigma one, and the main reason why I don't like this is because there is like no movement within this brush. It stays so stiff, and when you're blending product on the face, it just kind of pulls at the skin, and given that the head of it is so small, I feel like it just takes me forever to do my foundation with this. This guy, on the other hand, the bristles are a little bit more, while I would still say they're dense, they're just a little bit more spaced out. The brush is a little bit more fluffy, and you have a larger area to work with. So I feel like with this guy, I can really just get my foundation on, and it's so fast. Even faster than like my Beauty Blender and my Real Techniques sponge, which you guys know I love. That has been my preferred way of doing foundation forever. For some reason, I'm starting to prefer this. I find that this works well with my really, really liquidy foundations. That's the way I like to use this best. But even with my slightly thicker, more viscous kind of foundations, for example, Makeup Forever HD, something that kind of has much more of a creamy texture, this works really well too. I've just been absolutely adoring this. I've been using it every single day since I've purchased it, and I am obsessed with this, so I would really recommend this one. Next, let's talk about this guy. This is the e.l.f. Mineral Powder Brush. This is a much smaller, if you want to consider it a powder brush, it really is kind of small. Let me take I don't know, like let's look at the Real Techniques blush brush in comparison. Like, oh my gosh, this guy is tiny. And then I also have a Sonia Kashuk powder brush that I like a lot. You can just see here that the size of this is really small. So what I see this ideal for is, for me, I kind of have been using it a lot sort of as a contouring brush. It's got a really nice shape to it where it just kind of fits really well in the hollows there. And it just kind of allows me to buff and blend and kind of create a nice natural looking contour. I also like this just to use, hi baby. I also like to use this to kind of just set my face around my T-zone throughout the day because it's not super large, so I don't feel like I'm covering, you know, a lot of surface area. I can just kind of spot wherever I'm getting a little bit greasy. But I would say mainly this has been my favorite for contouring. I did use it with a mineral foundation, and I think the one downside I have to this is just the size. It's just really small, so it takes a long time. But again, the bristles on this are extremely soft, and like I said, I've been liking to use it more as a contour kind of brush. Next that I have here is called the Angled Blush Brush. This is, again, I guess something about freaking e.l.f. brushes. I think that they run really small, especially when you're comparing them on their website. They look a lot larger. I think that this is, again, a small angled blush brush. Just to show in comparison to my favorite, I mean, these brushes just look minuscule. Again, with this brush, I think it's great for contouring. It's, you know, got that angled shape, so it makes it really easy. You can kind of drag it over here by the hairline really nicely. But honestly, for blush, I used it to apply my blush today, and I do really like it. It just takes a little bit more time because, again, you're not covering as much surface area as you would be with a larger brush. So I have to be a little bit more patient with it, but I really do like the result I get. I also think that, you know, for some highlighting, this is really good, but I think the main uses for this for me is, again, blush and bronzer. The next guy that I have here is called the Small Tapered Brush. I picked this up because Emily Noel talks about it all the time to be a great under eye setting brush. I just want to grab the brush that I'm comparing this to. So my favorite setting brush for under the eyes for a long time has been the e.l.f. blush brush, just their regular blush brush. Again, with e.l.f. brushes, this is a very, very small blush brush. So for me, right under the eyes, it works absolutely perfectly. But when I was ordering online, I thought that maybe I'd try the real deal, the real small brush, just to see how it worked. And I will say that, I mean, it's smaller, so it's a little bit easier. The thing that I like more about the blush brush, though, is that it comes to a much more tapered point. So on this side we have the blush, and on this side we have the small tapered. I feel like that point here allows me to get closer to my lower lash line as opposed to this. I kind of have a hard time getting right up in there. And right here, kind of where my eye naturally crinkles, that's the part that I really, really do like to set because my eyeshadow like ends up so much in those lines. So I would say, if I had to recommend one, I would probably, for this kind of a purpose, I would probably go with the blush brush just because I personally prefer the taper. I do think that this is fantastic though. I think that this also works as a great highlighting brush. Like, it's just the perfect size. Any sort of small face detail work, if you want a much more precise contour, I think that this can definitely get in there and do that for you. So I see this as being a very, very multitasking kind of brush. And I'm not saying it works bad for under eye setting either. I've been using it nonstop since I've gotten it just because I've been trying to test it out. As you know, but having both, I will say that there's something about the blush brush with the taper that I prefer more for that sort of a use, but I definitely prefer this for its highlighting and more contouring kind of purposes. I have one last face brush, and this is probably the most interesting one of them all. This is called the blending brush. So I thought it was kind of funny because we have this guy here, which, like I said, I just love. This is called the ultimate blending brush, and then we have the blending brush. This is such an odd brush. This is, I think, another like $6 or $8 brush, so it's a little bit more spendy. The bristles on this, oh my god, so freaking soft. I can't get over it. I love it. This brush kind of, I don't know, it kind of confuses me because I'm not exactly too sure what it's going for. Right away, I was thinking, you know, blending brush. I'm kind of thinking with the shape, a little bit of contouring. I feel like a lot of these, almost every single one of these brushes can work for contouring just because it's honestly so easy to multitask with brushes there. But obviously with this kind of a shape, it's going to give you a much different effect than something like the mineral powder brush would, which I mentioned earlier. Again, for kind of a contouring option. This is a lot more natural, much more of a bronzed kind of look. This is going to give you a slightly more chiseled look, so I've used it for that purpose. I have also used this for foundation, and obviously the shape, and that's the issue I had with this, the shape of it just doesn't lend itself very well to being able to hug everything right. I think that you probably could get used to it and you could do it, but I have a hard time here in my forehead. I feel like I'm not exactly doing it right. I feel like I need something that I can circularly buff. Ugh, I said that weird. You know what I'm saying? Something like this where I can kind of just go in there and do this. With this guy, you kind of have to go like up and down, and it's just really odd. I think that this works in its best capacity as a bronzer slash contour brush. I also think this works fine for a powder brush if you want something kind of really dense, because this is quite dense. It's not super fluffy. And I think that this could also work well as kind of a finishing brush if you are done with your, you know, blush and bronzer and everything, and you feel like things are looking a little bit too heavy. You can kind of take this and blend over it, and it'll help to kind of soften and diffuse any lines. Honestly, I don't know if this is a must-have brush, just because if you already have like a contouring bronzing brush. If you already have a powder brush, I don't really see the function of this. There's something about the shape, it's just odd, and I cannot find a good use for it. And I've played with this so many different times. You can see here, I mean, I have a little bit of foundation, some bronzer, a couple different stuff on there. I just cannot figure out the best way to use this. So I don't know if I would recommend this one just because I don't really know what kind of a function it's supposed to serve. But I mean, if you can think of something, it is very soft and it's a good quality brush. Just not something that I think I'm going to get tons of use out of. And finally, I have 3 eye brushes. So let's start with the one that is probably my favorite. This is called the Crease Brush. And this is just a nice small tapered eye brush. If I was to compare it to something like, for example, this is an IT Cosmetics blending brush that I love that's very similar to like the Sigma E40. This is obviously a lot more tapered, it's a lot more pointy, and it's a bit more small, as opposed to, let's throw in a pencil brush here. We have something that's a lot more dense. This definitely has longer bristles, so it is a little bit more on the fluffy side. And very finally, let's just throw in like a MAC 217. So you can see the difference here. It's much more tapered, it's long, tapered, pointy, and it's a bit small. The reason I like this brush so much is when I'm doing my eye makeup, I really like to layer on shadows. So I usually start with a brush like this guy, and I'll just kind of go in, apply my transition shade, and then I usually go in maybe with my lid color, or sometimes I just work on my crease first. And with this guy, I like to go in, I kind of do like my light transition shade. This is my favorite medium toned shadow brush. So when I'm working on building out my crease, I love how well this just fits right here in the contours of my eye and kind of does a mix of applying and blending all at once. So I can kind of start getting my diffused, kind of more smoky look, and then I can go in with something like that pencil brush, I just completely lost it, and use that to start to really carve out the crease. So this is kind of like that good little middleman that gets in there and just makes the blending process a lot easier for you. I also like this if I'm working on blending out my lower lash line. I like this in aiding me to work on carving out my outer V. I just really like this brush because it, like I said, it does the application and the blending without you having to switch between 2 different brushes. So I have been really, as I flick myself in the eye with it, I have been really enjoying this brush, and I would really recommend it because I think that it is a good crease brush. I think it applies color very nicely, and I think that depending on how much you blend it out, you can get a couple of different looks with this. So I'm a big fan of this guy, and I would recommend it. The next one, this is interesting. This is called the blending brush, and on the website, it looks a lot like the MAC 217. So here is the MAC 217. Mine's a little bit frayed out. This brush did not work for me very well, and I've mentioned that in a couple different videos, but anyway, regardless, you can see here that if I was to turn them on their sides, the e.l.f. brush is much more pinched. Here in the center, it definitely just is squeezed more than this guy is. The MAC 217 just maintains more of an oval shape, while this guy, it almost comes like to a square on the sides here. So it's much different, and I think that it serves a much different purpose because the MAC 217 is kind of like your crease blending. This is a great sort of all-over purpose kind of brush. While I feel like this brush, it works amazingly for blending, but I think that that's it. And the shape of it is a little bit odd. It's not like your typical blending brush, but I do really like it, as opposed to something like this, which has much more of a circular kind of shape. This goes in there, it does the blending, it gets the job done. It's just a different format. What I have honestly enjoyed using this most for is actually highlighting. There's something about that slightly squared shape that allows me to place this right here underneath my brow bone and really get a strong highlight with it. And I think, given that these brushes are so cheap, I think that that's the great thing about these is you can really just, I wouldn't normally buy a brush for the single purpose of highlighting my brow bone. You can do that with almost any brush. But it's only $3, so even if this is the only purpose that it serves me, I'm totally okay with that because I think it does a fantastic job of it and it wasn't too expensive, so I'm not out a whole lot. But I do like this also for blending out my eyeshadow. It's just a different way of doing it. And then very finally, we have the e.l.f. flat eyeliner brush. I have to, of course, compare this to my other flat eyeliner brush that I use all the time. This is from Crown Brush. These again are very different. So the one from Crown Brush is a much more thinner brush. The one from e.l.f., there's something about it that is just, it's a bit thicker. There's more bristles within the brush. So this guy, what I've loved about this is that it's so thin. The actual like width of the brush there is just tiny. So it really gets into your lower lashes. You can really stamp into your upper lashes, and you can get a super controlled, very precise application of eyeshadow. Where with this guy, this is just a little bit more smudgier because the width of it is just a bit larger. And I mean, it's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. Regardless though, I really do like this brush. I don't find that it gets, especially on my upper lash line, I don't think it gets as into my lashes as this one does, just because this one is so thin. But what I like about this one is how well it gets into my lower lashes, and I kind of like that smudgy, more smoky look down there. So I think that this makes that process easier than this one does. So while I still kind of prefer this for my upper lash line when I'm trying to maybe just do eyeliner like I did today, which is just some eyeshadow, I kind of like this guy a little bit more because I can really dig in there to my lashes and get it really close to the root. This is really nice for the lower lashes because it allows me to smudge out the shadow more, whereas I can't really do that with this. I do use this on my upper lash line too. Today I actually did use this brush instead of that one, and I've been using this instead of that one since I've gotten these brushes. So it does work. I think you can totally make it work. It just comes down to, again, those minor little differences that when you actually do your makeup, you're not really going to notice in the end, but just through the application process, if you're trying to get close to the lash line, this is going to make it a little bit easier, but I do think that this serves a really nice purpose. And I love these flat eyeliner brushes. I just think that they do a good job of just kind of going in there and setting eyeliner or doing anything by the lash line. I just think that these are the best. And that is it. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I have other, like I said, e.l.f. brushes, but these are just the new ones that I bought. Some of these are also new to the website, so I hope that this is helpful for anybody who's maybe looking into any of these. Overall, as a whole, I do really strongly recommend the brush line. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the actual quality of these brushes. It just comes down to shape and functionality. Alright guys, again, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.